Hi guys, I'm gonna do a little practice go on a 10-minute video that I come across. I've never watched it. I thought I could watch it with you guys. I'm not expecting many of you guys to join. I haven't really said that I'm live. It does, obviously some of you will get notified. I hope you enjoy it. So let's get it up. So we've got this Beatles interview concerning Elvis and how he met them. We all know about it. We've all heard it before. Got myself a nice cup of tea. We're going to do a reaction to it. It's very old. It's low quality. Of course, the meeting of Elvis and the Beatles was a very special moment. So John Lennon has made it very clear that Elvis really created the Beatles. You know, that's how he was influenced. And Paul McCartney. So the Beatles really did want to meet Elvis when they went to America, and obviously they made it big in America. Massive in America, the Beatles. So let's just watch it, stop and start it, do a little reaction. It's also a test to see if this video is working. And then I'm going to do a part 2 where George Harrison discusses meeting the Beatles. Okay guys, here goes.
In the 50s, Elvis Presley has been the rebel, the outsider who blasted in the age of rock and roll. But in the 60s, while Elvis is busy making movies, there's a second revolution, the British invasion, headed by 4 Liverpool lads who idolize Elvis. In 1965, while the Beatles are taking America by storm, they visit Elvis, the man who inspired them in the first place, and a rock and roll summit is arranged. It is supposed to be a secret, but somehow word gets out. It is a night that changes history, and a night that is ominous for Elvis Presley, the rebel, as well.
So just so you know, guys, my name's Louis. I've been a fan of the Beatles for over 50 years. Of course, I love Elvis and the Beatles. I have done since I was a very small child, but Elvis has always been in my heart. I love the Beatles as a fan. The way I love Elvis is a completely different kind of love. It's very inside my soul and my heart. So yes, I'm a fan of the Beatles, but Elvis and Lisa feel like family to me. So it's a different kind of affection. They're both great. Yeah. So let's listen to what happened when the Beatles met Elvis.
August 16th, 1977. Elvis Presley goes into his bathroom and suddenly suffers a seizure. Perhaps the defining moments of his life flashed before his eyes like so many scenes in an incredible movie.
So sad.
It is 1965, and the Beatles are absolute sensations. The biggest phenomenon since Elvis himself. They dominate pop culture the way Elvis did 8 years earlier, with a #1 single, a #1 album, and a #1 movie, all titled Help.
And you can imagine Elvis was going through his movie career, you know, which he was obviously very disappointed with. He felt very disheartened. He'd seen the rise of bands like the Beatles, literally completely taking over the American scene. Must have been very difficult, very frustrating for Elvis, because he wanted to get out there and perform. He wanted to. He missed touring. He missed doing the live shows. He missed the fans, but he was tied into these, what I think are dreadful contracts to do these, some of the movies, unfortunately, just weren't in the league of Elvis Presley. And we all know Elvis had the ability to be a fantastic actor, to make amazing dramatic movies. He proved it in King Creole, Jailhouse Rock. So it's very disappointing that he was tied into these contracts. Colonel Tom Parker, I think, took the easy route and went for money and success of these movies rather than quality. Yeah. So Elvis was very disheartened. And whilst this is all going on, the Beatles and other massive bands like the Rolling Stones, etc., were just taking over. So I think meeting the Beatles for Elvis was quite a big moment.
Elvis's current movie, Tickle Me, is a flop. and it's been years since he made a real rock and roll record. Still, there's only one person the Fab Four really want to see while they tour America. And in August of '65, before playing the Hollywood Bowl, they call on Elvis at his gated Beverly Hills home.
There was thousands of kids outside the house that got leaked out. There was thousands all over the walls, the fences, everywhere.
John Lennon?
It's funny that the Beatles, when they came to America, the number one person they wanted to meet, because he had influenced all of them so much, was Elvis. That really, really was a very exciting and important thing that they had to do whilst in America.
Elvis Presley. Paul McCartney, Elvis Presley. George Harrison, Elvis Presley.
Do you imagine it, guys?
The Beatles are walking in the house, and it's like...
Seriously, guys, could you imagine being a fly on the wall and this is all going on? I wonder how the Beatles felt. I wonder how Elvis felt.
You know, introducing royalty to royalty. One thing leads to another, and they come in, and the Beatles, being very, very shy people, were sitting there, and nobody said anything.
And they're just staring at him now. There's a moment of silence. As a matter of fact, it was a long moment of silence.
I bet there was a moment of silence.
So finally, Elvis sits there, and he's nervous, and the Beatles are sitting there, and they don't know what to say.
Finally, he just looked
Can
at
imagine
him and
it.
said, hey, look, if y'all are going to stare at me all night long, I'm going to bed.
I'm going to bed, man. Yeah, I was kind of hoping we could sit around and talk, maybe about music, maybe even jam.
And when he said that, they just went nuts. And, you know, because that was a dream
I bet they did.
for them. So then they got up and went by the piano, and they started singing. I mean,
If only they recorded it. If only there were more pictures of this event. I think Colonel Tom Parker, from what I've read, went out of his way to keep this very private. I don't really know why. It's such a shame that there is no actual footage or pictures of this event. I might have seen like one picture, two pictures of, but not here, but outside of the home. But we would have loved to listen to this, watch this, see pictures of this literally historical event.
every one of us had said, boy, if we just had a tape recorder, that would have been fantastic.
Brilliant. Seriously, I get it. And sorry about the quality of this, is terrible, but I'm still like enjoying this.
Surface, it appears to be a light-hearted jam session. But the Beatles are painfully aware of Elvis's decline as the king of rock and roll. John Lennon is the Beatle who finally breaks the ice on this touchy subject.
Mr. Lennon cornered Elvis in one part of the house.
I think this is really important, what he's about to say now. He's basically saying to him, where have you been? You know how good you are. You've disappeared. Now, John Lennon has said in interviews that he felt that Elvis, when he came out of the army, died, was castrated. I mean, I've seen the interviews. I know that's a bit rude, a bit insulting, but I understand what he meant. The Elvis that went into the army was a real rebel, rock and roll, sort of dynamite personality. And then after he came out of the army, things became very bland concerning, obviously, he's doing the movies. The Frank Sinatra show was very toned down. Even G.I. Blues, which I do like the film G.I. Blues, it was quite calm. It was very much a family-friendly type image. So John Lennon and the Beatles had fallen in love with the rebel. So let's keep going.
He said, well, Elvis, how come you don't cut any more rock and roll records like you used to? And Elvis replied, well, it's my film schedule. It's kind of tight, but maybe I'll cut one soon just for kicks. And Lennon replied, well, in that case, we'll buy that one. I'll bet it shook Elvis up a little bit. Lennon was just arrogant enough to sort of slap his face a little and say, Elvis, why aren't you making the records like you used to, the great records that made us want to be musicians. So come on, cut some rock and roll again.
I ain't got no matches,
Yeah, that's a good point, guys.
but I sure got a long way
And maybe this lit a flame in Elvis, to get back to the roots, his roots, to get back to the passion, the fire in his belly that made the whole world see him. Yeah, the real Elvis, the true Elvis. So I'm so glad, really, that John Lennon had this conversation with Elvis. Maybe this is what led to the 68 comeback special 3 years later. Yeah, so I think it was 3 years later. You put me right, guys, if I'm wrong. Let's listen to the ending.
By the time they left, you know, they had said this was the greatest night, and Paul and John, in particular, had said, well, look, if you guys are not doing anything tomorrow, how about coming over to see us? And Elvis said, well, I'll try. Well, we knew he wasn't going to go.
I wonder why, though.
Born that night in the heart of Elvis Presley, a burning desire to get back to.
I wonder why that they knew Elvis would not see them again. I heard that John Lennon went to see Elvis in concert in 1972. I heard the Memphis Mafia carried on meeting the Beatles. So it's just interesting. I think the Elvis that we've all got to know, you know, us fans, I think he would have been very intrigued by the Beatles. I think he would have liked them. I mean, obviously, I've heard the negative stuff that is said about Elvis and the Beatles from Elvis. We don't really know the truth, do we? I know that the Beatles had a bit of a hard time in America eventually as well. I know the history there, but I still think the meeting of these giants, the Beatles, Elvis. Now, of course, Elvis is just one man. I still say now, Elvis was bigger than the Beatles, in my opinion, because I still think he was one person that conquered the world. And then he came back again with the 68 comeback special, and again in 69 with the Vegas comeback. And even now, the way he's remembered now still by the millions and millions of fans. Just recently, the Netflix documentary, obviously Baz Luhrmann's movie, Elvis. And I think even now they're talking about the new Baz Luhrmann documentary footage. There is still a massive thirst for Elvis. Massive, massive, massive. To all generations. Of course, the Beatles, still massive. But I still think if there was a horse race, Elvis would win it. Elvis would win it. He did so much on his own with no help. Just one person. Yeah? And the love is so strong. The success of Graceland is phenomenal. He still is adored around the world. Anyway, guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this. Just a quick video. We're going to do a part 2 with some other interviews, like with George Harrison and a few of the other Beatles as a follow-up to this. But I also wanted to test that the system's working. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Hopefully the sound of the video is loud enough. I know the camera moves about a bit. It's one of those AI cameras that follow you. See, look, if I do that, so look, ooh, it's trying to follow me, which is quite funny. I need to get used to it a bit. So thanks, guys. All the best. You're going to watch this now on the live stream. There's more to come. Take care, guys, from